I was supposed to get this cup done for Houston Livestock Show and rodeo time. You know me. So it did take a little backseat for a while. However, I was super excited when I was finally able to pull this boot off together, and here we have it. Okay, so we have a lot of things going on in here, hence why it took so long for me to make this cup. We've got a lot of collaborators working on this baby right here. The boot and the cow skull up here, 3D on a cover. I also got a Pilsner handle from Tumbler Shields. The foil that is decorating the boot is from Southern Belle Glitter. I wanted something colorful, girly, yet very Texas. And the rhinestones, Crystal Ninja baby. When 3D Undercover sent me this boot sleeve, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it, make a statement and be extra, because there's no other way to be in Texas. All right, we're back with another Tumbler sleeve, and as always, I always say we have to prep these guys very well before we actually go in with all of our details. So first things first, let's give them a nice base coat. I do want to put down some paint first, and then I'm gonna put down some resin. You could go right in and you can do the resin, you can skip the paint, but this is kind of the way that I like to do it. I wanna make sure that I have a nice primed canvas. So let's paint this guy. After it's painted, I'm gonna take my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure epoxy and I'm going to cover it from top to bottom, making sure that I'm getting the epoxy inside all of those fine grooves and lines. This is a 3D print, and if you look very closely, if you run your finger on it, you'll see that there's little tiny lines and grooves and ridges. I wanna make sure all that is covered, because once you start putting your glitter or your details, your ink or your foil or whatever it is you're wanting to detail this guy with, you're gonna notice that there's little lines that are going to start to show through, and that's not attractive. So let's fill all those in and give us a nice level surface to work with. I wanted this cup to be super extra, so I'm gonna combine this boot with the cow skull. The cow skull is also gonna get the same prep treatment as well. So let's get him out and let's prep him with some paint and some epoxy. Okay, now that our boot is nice and cured, we're back and we're gonna start putting down our base, our pattern. And I decided I wanted to do kind of a rustic, rugged, yet still feminine look to this boot. And I decided I was gonna do that with foil. Now, I'm not like the best foiler in the world. I will say that right now, but I ain't scared. I'm gonna jump right into this guy. This is like a snakeskin, girly green and pink and black. I'm gonna put the black on the bottom part of the boot, and I'm going to leave the pattern on the leg of the boot. It looks like I forgot to record the part where I actually put down the tacket. So real quick, I'll fill you in. What I did was I took painter's tape and I covered the bottom part of the boot, and I applied a nice thick coat of Eileen's tackets, came back, and then I pulled off the tape. And now what I'm trying to do here is I'm placing the foil in strips. Because I'm leaning into this rugged texture, this worn leather like a boot, I'm not really so concerned with it being a nice flowy pattern, okay? There's gonna be some cracks and there's gonna be some shifties and a little bit of missing spots here and there. I can always come back and fill them in because I'm really leaning into this distressed look. So it's perfect, you know? When in doubt, distress, right? To get into those grooves that you see on the boot, I'm using a toothbrush. It's nice and gentle bristled toothbrush that I can get all up in there just like I'm brushing my teeth. And I will pull away my carrier and I will be left with the print. The best way that I can see that this works for me is if I work in strips, kind of like if I use it in a way that I'm applying wallpaper to a wall. You know, I cut it in workable strips. If I were to try to wrap this whole guy with one giant piece of foil, it would be a disaster. So best way to do this is in strips. Some foils are easier to work with than others. This is a very easy release foil, so I'm very happy that, you know, it turned out that way, because Lord help me, if this was one of those, you know, temperamental ones, we would have been fighting all night. I'm not really even paying attention to the pattern so much as I'm paying attention to the color, okay? I see that there's a lot of green in some spots. I wanna make sure that there's not too much pink in some spots. So I'm just kind of spreading it out and trying to make sure that the sections of the boot with the least ripples and detail, those get a nice consistent coverage, because we definitely want it to show the pattern, but at the same time, I'm not gonna stress about it. So I'm just really pushing it in there and applying a lot of pressure with my finger and rubbing it in, just so that way it does adhere nice and well. But also, if I can't get my finger in there, I will push it in with my toothbrush. If you're missing any spots where it's just not tacky anymore, you can always go back in there and you can add some more of the tacket, come back in and fill it in once it's dry. It's gonna be perfect, trust me. Just keep layering, keep in mind, and keep an eye on that pattern, and it's gonna play into the whole distressed, rugged look. So you're gonna have some cracks and you're gonna have some bald spots. That's okay. Now I'm gonna take some of my chrome powders and I'm gonna fill in those cracks and gaps with the powder and a brush, and it's gonna look flawless. It's gonna make it shimmer. It's gonna be perfect. Check it out. And all I'm doing here is I'm taking a nice big fat brush, dipping it in my powders, and I'm just trying to go over the boot as a whole. And it's filling in all the gaps and it's making it look super girly, and I love it. And it's tying it all together just as if the foil had wrapped around the entire boot with no cracks and no gaps. Okay, now that the top of the boot is finished, let's do the bottom part of the boot. I'm gonna outline this first in black, and I'm gonna make a nice defined border of where I want my black to be, just so that way I don't accidentally paint something that I'm not supposed to paint. I'm gonna step back and I'm gonna look, and then from there, I'll go ahead and I will paint the entire thing black. The paint that I'm using here is called Blindfolded. It's one of my acrylic paints here in my line. I absolutely love this paint. I love my blacks, whether it's stiletto, metal priming paint, or it's blindfolded, or it's raven, they're perfect. So if you don't have blindfolded, you gotta go get yourself some blindfolded, because this formula is my absolute favorite. Okay, now that our black is all done and our sleeve is nice and to the point where it can go out and it can get sealed, we're going to turn our attention over to our tumbler. I want to make sure that the tumbler that we put down in here, which is a 20, what is this, a 20 straight, I want to make sure that it fits down in there nice and snug. So I'm going to wrap this guy in some vinyl, and the one that I'm going to go with is this nice fuchsia pink chrome vinyl. Okay, you only have to wrap your tumbler in like halfway down. Don't waste all your foil or anything like that. In fact, I think this is even a little too much foil, a little overkill, too much vinyl. It's up to you. One of the things that I love about chrome vinyl is that it is so pretty when it works in your favor. But oh my gosh, it is so temperamental. If you are trying to get a nice, smooth, clean wrap to a tumbler, I mean, you gotta make sure that there's no taper. You gotta make sure that, because it is so temperamental. And so I put it down on here, and I kind of noticed that it was starting to kind of pucker up at the top where it starts to curve into the lip. And I didn't like that. I thought it was like, ugh, why? And then with it being chrome and everything, you can see every little ripple and bubble. So I said, screw it. I did my whole crinkle look, and I leaned in once again to my distress. So this is where you see me starting to say, okay, you know what? This isn't going to work. Pulled it back off, and I did the crinkle, and now I'm going to apply this, and I'm going to lean into that whole imperfection. You know, we meant to do this, okay? But really I didn't. So now you'll see that if there is a pucker, I'm totally gonna pretend like I meant to do that. And then that'll make it so much easier on me when I go to trim this edge off. And if there is a little bit of pucker, if there is a little bit of inconsistency, that's fine. I'm gonna trim it off, and then I'm gonna paint the rest of that black. I swear, just the tiniest little tiny details sometimes give me the most trouble. But you know, it's all for the best in the end, and it kind of makes it you know, you'll learn what works, you'll learn what doesn't work, and it builds character, especially for the tumbler, right? Because that's what we're here for. Okay, so instead of using glue to put my tumbler down at the bottom here, I'm gonna use some of my epoxy sculpt, and I'm just going to kind of stick this guy here at the base, and I'm going to mush him down in there. So instead of using glues or anything like that, I'm just gonna make sure that I have it down here on the bottom, and then I'm gonna smush it on down there just so that way it's nice and snug and secure. Once we epoxy this, it's a done deal, okay? All right, moving on. Let's attach our handle. I wanna make sure, because again, just like the bear, this is a very heavy tumbler. Even though the sleeve is meant to take away from the weight that you would generally get from a clay sculpted tumbler, it's still, once you put your drink in there, you got your tumbler in there, it's bulky. I do not want this thing to be slipping out of my hand and falling. God, no, that would be a disaster. So favorite way that I like to apply my handles, I use epoxy sculpt, okay? It's a 1-to-1 formula, mash it up, get it all nice and blended. I'm gonna put it on the tips of my handle, and then I'm going to apply it to the back of my sleeve, okay? I attached it to the side. I UV cured it just to seal it all in and make sure there's no air gaps or anything like that. Now it's time to paint and glitter. So it looks like I forgot to film the glittering part of this. I will link the glitter that I used down at the bottom. This is San Jose. And this is just a spare scrap of foil that I had laying around. I didn't throw it away, and I'm glad because look, it came in handy. I don't want to wrap this completely. I want the glitter to be like the main show, but I also want to play into this whole distress thing. As I was saying, we will kind of sparsely put this foil just to give it some visual texture, okay? All right. Handle is detailed. Let's take him outside and give him a good coat of epoxy. When we come back, it is time to place our skull right on the front, okay? I want this to look like an old school Cadillac where, you know, Burt Reynolds drives up and, you know, the first thing you see is the big skull, the blinged out skull. The skull is the front. It's the face of this tumbler. It's time to put the grand finale on this cup. I've been waiting for this moment right here for a long time. Let's do this. Okay, now I'm taking my super tight epoxy. This is a 1-to-1 epoxy. This is usually done on rhinestones. I'm gonna put this on the back of my skull. I'm gonna mix it, get it nice and thick, and then I'm going to adhere it, okay? I'm gonna put some tape down so it doesn't slip around and slide. This has, I wanna say, about an hour to 2 hour dry time. I'm gonna put it down, and once it is cured, I will pull my tape up, and this guy is ready. He is ready to rock and roll. He's ready for his grand appearance, and he's ready to go have some fun at the rodeo. Okay, there he is. I had such a good time with this cup. When I got this boot, I knew that I wanted it to be big, bougie Texas, and that's exactly how it turned out. I'm in love with it. I love how it has the sparkly rhinestones on there mixed with a bunch of distressed snake skin. You know, it's just fabulous. I love it, and I'm gonna be sporting this guy. If you enjoyed this video or this tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment if you have any concerns, questions. I will be seeing you soon. Take care.